For kids growing up in the 80s and 90s, few books were as beloved or as feared as Alvin Schwartz's Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark. With their eerie folklore retellings and Stephen Gammell's unforgettable nightmare fuel illustrations, these books didn't just entertain a generation, they haunted it. But not everybody loved these books. Some parents fought hard to have them banned from schools and public libraries across the country. But were these books all that bad? Join us for the second episode of our horror-themed documentaries for the month of October. You're listening to Real Stories, Real Problems with Rachael and Roxanne.
Rachael, how are you today?
I'm good. How are you, Roxanne?
I am good. We got through the intro. That was nice. And I'm excited to talk about this today. I was not of the demographic that they were aiming for, because I was a little too old for these books. But as a writer and as an English professor, censorship is a hill I will die on. But there are so many other interesting things happening at that time period. Why don't you share them with us?
Well, this documentary was made in 2019. And in 2019, Donald Trump was impeached. Devastating fire at the Notre Dame Cathedral happened in Paris. And then that was the first case of what we now know as COVID-19 was diagnosed on December 1st in Wuhan, China. So yeah, 2019 was leading up.
Yes, it was the prep year. It was the practice run, the dress rehearsal, if you will, of the terror that was about to be unleashed.
Yeah, this was a weird year, and for the actual books themselves were from like the 80s and 90s, maybe back even into the 70s. And if you were a child at this time, you remember having this book and seeing it in the library, and it almost felt wrong to touch it because the pictures on the book were so graphic.
Oh, I had to look them up. I actually went and I typed in Google images and the covers. I was like, my God, this is like the Babadook. We just don't want to open it. Just leave it over there.
Oh, yeah. The images in this book were just horrifying. But you felt like you had to read it. Like you shouldn't, but you had to. It had this kind of like dynamic to it. And I'm sure that was part of the selling point of it.
The psychology of it. It was like a dare, and those eyes, or in some cases, those eye sockets, just looking at you off the page, very disconcerting. Yes.
Oh yeah, it was a trip, that book. And in the documentary, it opens with like a story and a quote from Alvin Schwartz about Mamilius, a child who started to tell a scary story but was arrested. It's very cute. If you haven't seen this documentary, you need to go see it because we can't do it justice by sharing it here. You just need to see it.
Recreate it.
But yeah, this documentary, they talked to a bunch of people, all of whom are about my age, who their lives were changed by the presence of this book. Musicians and artists, one woman who's a tattoo artist, and like all these people who were driven in part by the stories, by the art, by everything in these books. And it literally changed the direction of their lives when they were in like third or fourth grade,
right,
to find these books. And one of the guys they start with is a musician named Joe Whiteford, and he talks about how he came to find the Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark books, but he sings a song version of The Worms Crawl In, The Worms Crawl Out, and that'll be stuck in your head for days.
It will be. It was. My dad used to sing that to me all the time. That's what he did. And so it's at least a very ancient, well, not ancient, but it's been around a while. I mean, my father was born in 1930 and, he knew it. So
But one of the things that I love about these books is these are all based on legends and folklore from all around the world. A lot of these stories are hundreds of years old
Right.
from all across the world. He was not bringing anything new to you except for the presentation
My
of
father.
it. Yeah, well, yeah, not your fault.
Okay.
Um, specifically, Alvin Schwartz, the guy who wrote the books, this was not, he was not creating anything from whole cloth.
No, he's collecting them and
He's,
anthologizing them, and
yeah, but his presentation of it was what made it different. The way he broke it down, he made it into bite-sized bits that children could understand and read and appreciate, and that were scary, but not too
right,
scary.
right.
And then they added the illustrations right out of your nightmares. So
Yes, exactly. That scared the hell out of me more than anything that's between the covers. Yeah, and considering that the cover is kind of like it's like the movie poster. It's the first impression you have of the book, and whether or not you're gonna open it up and start reading. And
well,
at
and the
same
cover of this book is a silhouette of a head, a monstrous head growing out of the ground.
yes,
And if if you're listening to this, you've seen this image, you've seen these books somewhere. It's unnerving to look at. It feels like you can feel that it's wrong, but the black and white like imaging and the shading of it,
oh yes, the cognitive dissonance that these things put you into is astounding.
yeah. But they were talking to people who all through the whole documentary was people who how they discovered the books and how they impacted their lives, and like they're talking to artists who are sculpting images of these illustrations,
Right.
turning them into 3D animation, or like and as they're showing these people's modern works, they're talking about, these books sold more than 7 million copies,
Yeah.
and it was the number one most banned book of the 1990s. And it continues to be one of the most challenged books as people
Of
push for
course.
more book bans.
I long to write a book that would be banned. I think that that's equal in coolness only to maybe be one of Richard Nixon's enemy lists. I'd love to be an enemy.
Yeah, they talked about these books, and everyone who they talked to, except for one lady, had such love for these books. Their memories of this was not being terrified as a
Right,
child and like
right.
having to hide with their parents. Their memory was of this discovery and then
Mhm.
having this book in their hands and learning these things, and kind of, there's a whole appendix at the back of these books that tells you this story came from this area and this is the origin of the story. And like, it's truly an anthology. And I think it was probably most kids' first introduction to that type of storytelling, which I think was very cool.
Yes, definitely.
And when these books were out, spooky things for kids were kind of in vogue. They had um kind of like a boy's version of an easy bake oven. It was a creepy crawler machine.
Yes, they made little like jelly like bugs and spiders and things like that.
Yeah. And then they had like the Frankenberry and Count Chocula cereals, and they had like all sorts of spooky things aimed at kids. This was right in that general area.
Right.
Like Beetlejuice had its own Saturday morning cartoon, and like, so they were really like it at the time. That was a very popular, very common thing for kids.
Right.
And then as they're showing like all this joy and all this love that people have, they start to talk about the book bans, the attempts to ban these books, showing news stories from, God, it had to be the early 90s.
Okay, I believe it.
Yeah, parents in PTA meetings screaming about how this was harming their children and they should not have access to these books. And it was surreal because I kind of wanted to go back in time and be like, then tell your kid not to read that book.
There you go.
Like, my kid can read whatever they want.
Right.
You are welcome to limit your kids' reading all day long.
Don't tell me exactly.
Don't tell me that I can't let my kid read it.
And weirdly, the person largely responsible for the moral panic in the early 90s over books and music lyrics was Tipper Gore. For those of you who do not know who Tipper Gore is, she was Vice President Al Gore's wife during the Clinton administration. And her particular thing were labeling CDs with warning explicit lyrics that would, it was basically like rating movies GPG, PG-13 or what. And that way the parents could be like, does my kid know the word fuck? Well, he will now. Here's your CD. Yeah, so that was, and that's when it caught on. Viewer discretion is advised.
Yeah, this was coming out of the Satanic Panic.
Yeah.
Because in the 80s, the Satanic Panic really got going with,
oh
my God, they're sacrificing toddlers in daycares to Satan. And my understanding is that the origin of the Satanic Panic was that when the economy started to go to shit enough that women had to go into the workforce en masse.
Right.
Like, this wasn't just one person deciding for their family she should go back into the other. Right. Everybody kind of had to be a two-income household. It kind of became this, we should be afraid of the people watching our children who are not their mothers.
Right.
And so it drove this fear of schools, daycare, like babysitters, like that sort of thing. And so the Satanic Panic kind of rose out of that. And one dude, and I don't even remember his name, and I'm not going to look it up because he does not deserve even to be remembered for this.
Okay.
He wrote a fake journal about how he was part of one of these satanic groups sacrificing children in a daycare. And this book was used to springboard this whole movement.
They didn't know it was fiction. He had made that clear.
You didn't really have to label stuff like that as fiction. Like in the 70s, there was a book, Go Ask Alice.
Oh, I love Go Ask Alice. I know all about that. Wonderful. Yeah, with Dr. Beatrice Sparks. I'm doing doctor and quotation marks. Yeah.
Yeah. So for people who don't know, Go Ask Alice was this fake journal. It was a fake diary of a girl who slowly gets dragged into drug culture and ends up taking drugs, and she feels like bugs are crawling under her skin, and it makes her kill the child she is watching. And then, if I remember correctly, she kills herself, and her father supposedly finds this journal.
You're thinking of Jay's journal. He got into the occult and killed himself. Alice, overdosed.
Yeah. There was some kind of thing, but Go Ask Alice was fictional. But if you picked up the paperback book and you looked through it, you had no idea that it was fictional.
Yeah, the cover actually said Go Ask Alice, a real diary.
Yeah.
And if anybody wants to find out the real story about how that book got written, I recommend reading a book called Unmask Alice. Which tells the whole story of the grift, Dr. Sparks wanting more and more fame. It's fabulously written. So yeah, it's called Unmasked Alice.
Yeah, I will be looking that one up. But yeah, so this was in the 80s. Another guy basically did that. But his journal of what his activity was that he was part of a Satan group sacrificing children in a daycare. And so that spurned that whole thing. And I'm sure other people have figured this out too, but over the course of my lifetime, I've seen that there are groups of people who need a thing to be afraid of and upset about.
Yes.
And it doesn't seem to matter what it is. Like, they'll reach out and grab whatever it is.
So basically, you had the idea for Facebook 30 years before because
yeah,
if you want to get mad at stupid shit, Facebook is the place to go.
But yeah, so when I was in high school, all of these far-right Christian fundamentalists hated Harry Potter. They literally published articles about Harry Potter is teaching children magic spells.
Yep.
Like that it's actual literal wizardry that your children are learning in these books. Those same people now love Harry Potter because J.K. Rowling is a TERF and they support that. So they have come around from this is teaching your child the witchcraft that will keep them out of heaven
Oh my God.
to this is a great book. You should support it because the lady who writes it is a bigot. And so that's just kind of how things roll.
Fascinating. It's really fascinating about the way that the tides turn depending on what's happening in the world. That's a very good point.
Yeah, there are some people who just their identity is built on hating a thing.
Yes.
And it doesn't matter what that thing is.
Yes.
And one of the women in this documentary, that was her identity. And she talks about, like, she's going to these PTA meetings talking about children should not have access to these books. And her argument 35 years later when she's being interviewed was that I never wanted them taken all the way out of schools. I didn't want them in elementary schools.
Mhm.
Even though elementary school was the age that these books were written for.
Right.
She wants them in middle schools and high schools at the point when kids are no longer interested in that.
Mhm.
Like they've aged beyond those books. But the imagery is too scary. The stories are too scary. Elementary school children shouldn't have access to these, was her argument. And as they're talking to her and they're talking to all the people who love these books, they're also talking to Alvin Schwartz's son.
Oh, I loved Alvin Schwartz's son.
Yeah.
That's how so much. He loved his dad so much.
He did. And as he's talking, you can tell they had a falling out at some point.
Mm-hmm.
And they started to bring their relationship back together before he died. And his son had a lot of feelings about that.
Of course, yeah.
Survivor's
guilt, yeah.
But he definitely loved his dad so much. And he talked about growing up. He didn't think this was a cool job for his dad to have. He was just like, great, that's what my dad does. Fantastic.
My dad upsets people at PTA meetings.
But yeah, so you get a bunch of different points of view in this documentary, which I really liked a lot. It wasn't just one thing the whole way through. But they talk in detail about like the animations and the stories, and as they're going through, they start talking to some other horror writers of the time, including R.L. Stine.
Oh, yes.
Who everybody loved when I was a kid. Like, and when you look back at it now, he came out with like 9 Goosebumps books a year. He was not writing all of those books.
Right.
This was clearly like he had a team writer.
Yes.
But he was kind of the guiding force behind his horror.
Yeah.
And he was the elementary school Stephen King.
Yeah.
We all loved him so much. But yeah, they talk about how kind of the 80s and 90s was the golden age of children's horror.
Yeah.
I totally agree with that.
Yeah.
And because before that, it was very much like Scooby-Doo. And
yeah, exactly. Right. Roadrunner and the harmless Saturday morning cartoons.
Yeah, Steph was kind of around the edge of ghosty before that. And then in the 80s and 90s, they really leaned into it, which for the better.
Yeah.
Because,
of course.
Because I love all of that stuff.
Yes.
But then they were talking to Bruce Coville and R.L. Stine about why they write horror for kids and like why Alvin Schwartz was such a genius, because he passed away. I forget what year, but he has been dead for a while at this point when they're making this documentary. And they're talking about like what made him so good at this. And it was the taking this source material and making it age appropriate.
Right.
Because that's harder to do than you'd think.
Yeah. Because the basic plot is, I was reminded of the fairy tales and folk tales from Germany.
Oh, Struwwelpeter.
Oh my God. Struwwelpeter. Oh God. And then they cut off his hands. The end. It's just, that's what this reminds me of. They're morality tales. Don't do this. They're cautionary tales.
Yeah, some of them. And some of them are jokes. Like there's a whole section of the book that is, these stories are to be read out loud to someone else. Because the end is always, and then it's a jump scare, screaming scary. And then there's a whole section where the end is like a one-off pun or a thing. My favorite scary story from all of these books
Do tell.
was the one with the black cats. Did you ever read that one?
I haven't read any of them.
I have the book.
Yeah. But of course you own them. So
Yeah. But yeah, so there's a story where this guy shows up at this house and I'm gonna look up the names of cats because I remember this and I remember loving it so much. Let's see. The scary stories to tell of the dark. There's a old man and he's on a walk and it starts to rain, and so he passes by an old house and he decides to go inside because it looks abandoned. He's just trying to get out of the rain. And there's nobody in the house, and he lays down to take a nap, and he wakes up, and there's a black cat staring at him. And he's like, that, oh, all right. And he falls back asleep, and then he wakes up, and there's a second black cat, but it's the size of like a dog. And so he's like, what's going on? And the big cat asks the little cat, he says, should we do it now? And the little cat says, no, wait till Martin comes. And so the old man is like, this got to be a dream. And he falls back asleep and he wakes back up again. And this time there's a third cat, but the third cat is like the size of a tiger.
Oh my God.
And it asks both of the other cats the same question. And the other cats give the same answer. They're like, well, no, we wait till Martin comes. And the old man gets up and says, tell Martin I couldn't wait, and leave. And it's like, it's this big build up as
a Shaggy dog story.
Yeah.
I like it.
So there's like a few things like that in there where it feels like it's supposed to have to scary, but no, it's not. So there is horror in this for sure, but there is that too. Like, wait till Martin comes. No, thank you.
Right, exactly. So what question? What Martin is feeding his cats that grew to be such enormous size?
Well, the beauty of that is Martin a bigger cat? Is Martin like the biggest cat? Is he a person who controls the cat? Like,
is he even live there?
Like, who is Martin and why is he important?
And why can't the cats eat without Martin?
Yes. So, yeah, these stories are all like that, where it makes you think and it makes you be like very aware, and it kind of builds up in your system. And some of them are like the urban legends of the stories of the spider bite that turns out to have blade in it.
Oh yeah. Oh my God. I knew where that was going when the woman started telling the story, and I went, yeah, it's gonna happen. It's gonna happen. There it is, because I'm terribly arachnophobic. And like I said, they are cautionary tales. Even like the spider. First of all, that was a negligent mom in the spider bites story.
Yeah, the one who said, "Oh, fuck it, what's going on with your face?"
Yeah, I mean, who lets their child, develop this oozing carbuncle? And that's a word I'd love to use. So thank you for giving me the opportunity to say it. Why doesn't she take her to the ER right then and there? My mom certainly would.
Oh my goodness, yeah. And so many of the stories are like, they have underlying meaning, and some of them are cautionary tales, and some of them are, social commentary on the time, and but they all have these like origins, that these are very old stories. He's not making these up. And so they're talking to all of these people who these books were the reason they were readers.
Yeah.
These books were the things that took them from, I don't want to read, to, I'm going to stay up late with flashlight in my blanket. And that's what I'm going to read.
Yeah.
And that alone is reason enough for these books not to be banned.
Yeah.
Because you're instilling a really excellent habit in your children.
Exactly.
By letting them read this thing, even if it is a little bit morbid or macabre or whatever.
And I guess also, from what I understand, all of the stories are don't have the same level of jump scares or fear or horror, and you can decide maybe for yourself what your particular child, where their limit is. And then the next year they could certainly handle, because real life will start to creep in, and real life was more terrifying than any scary story,
Yeah. And they talked kind of in detail about how these stories, how they kind of tell these underlying stories below the words, like the cautionary tale part of it. But like the babysitter who's telling the spider story to the two little girls, the red spot, they address how that's like the horror of puberty, the horror of childbirth.
Yes,
It goes
of your body changing and weird shit showing up on your face, which happens.
which is horrifying when you're going through it.
Oh, sir.
And it even goes back to like the birth of Athena out of the brain of Zeus. Like this idea of life and gore coming out of a body.
Exactly.
This is the thing we've been afraid of and fascinated by for thousands of years.
And I don't think it's any mistake that John Carpenter really started his body horror movies during this era. You know, Scanners, Videodrome, really messed up stuff. The Thing, certainly. And yeah.
Yeah, and then they had like the Hook story is in this book. That's like a dangers of premarital sex.
Mhm.
And then the one that I have in my notes, I'm sure Roxanne's gonna have a lot to say about this one, is Harold the Scarecrow, which was all about bullying.
Yeah.
But it's not told in a way that you read it and you're like, oh, this is bullying.
Right, right.
It's this underlying, they're being terrible to the Scarecrow.
Right.
And the Scarecrow is going to turn around and take revenge on them for it.
Yes. Which every bullied kid fantasizes about. Oh my God. Believe if I was alive today, oh God, if I was in junior high school today, I'd be one of those kids that the guidance counselor would call down to ask if everything's okay. Sure, yeah.
Yeah, these stories had so much meaning, and these were researched in the folklore department at Princeton.
Right.
He went to Princeton University and used their library and their folklore department to find this stuff. This was deeply researched, like very thought out information. This was not a fly by night book.
Right.
Which, as much as I love R.L. Stine, if you're publishing that many books a year, a lot of this is fly by night.
Right.
God forbid that whatever R.L. Stine is working on today, because AI could generate 100 books once a year.
How depressing.
And then they even they talked about how Stephen Gamble, the guy who drew the pictures that just destroyed everybody's world, about how he did not work with the authors to develop these pictures. He waited till the work was finished and then he read it and he drew what came to mind for him reading the words. And as much as those illustrations were fabulous, I hope he spoke to somebody.
Yeah.
Because that was kind of like, you could maybe talk to a therapist, Stephen.
Yeah, I would love to have some of those designs on t-shirts. Yeah, that would be special.
Yeah, it was so interesting, and these stories were so intricately researched. And when they were talking to R.L. Stine, he was like, I'm so impressed because I didn't research anything. I just kind of pulled it all out of my ass. It just was such a fascinating documentary to hear about. And then they even got into like the humorous stories about the viper.
Right.
I am the viper. I'm here to vipe your windows. But yet they talked about so many of the stories being like what happens after death, being the driving force behind the stories, and the worms crawl in, the worms fall out, what happens to the body after you die. And then they got back into the book ban, which I loved, because through the whole documentary, you're getting like 90-second bits of talking to this librarian who has been told to take these books out of the library. And the principal says, take them out of the library. We've had a complaint. She says, have you read them? And he says, no. And she says, well, read them and I'll read them and together we'll talk about it. And she comes back a couple weeks later and he's like, you got to get rid of the books. And she's like, did you read it? And he's like, no. She's like, well, I think I can make an argument for these books. These are historical in nature. This is the anthology of all of this folklore, and it's very valuable to children to have this information. But the parents who are pushing back, the head mom that's pushing back against this librarian, shoots herself in the foot because they have this big Halloween event at the school. And she comes and her children are dressed up as a ghost and a witch, I believe is what they were. There's a witch and something else. It may have been a skeleton or whatever. Um, and so the librarian just discreetly took a picture. And then later the principal showed the picture to the mom and was like, you need to retract your complaint.
Ah, yes, that is a beautiful thing.
And that's what I was talking about, like this, I need a thing to be mad at.
Yeah.
So she clearly had no problem with witches and ghosts and scary things.
Exactly.
She
yes.
dressed her kids up like that. She understands that kids know the difference between fake and real and all of that.
See, my mom was one of those people who, if she didn't have something to worry about, she got worried. Then my father was always like, you are just not happy unless you're afraid or sad. What's going on? Don't you understand this is a safe space?
Yeah, so they clearly, these parents, a lot of them were very much in that space of,
right,
I have a knee-jerk response to this and I am afraid of it for whatever reasons my brain has concocted. And so I need to make sure nobody else ever is exposed to this.
right, right.
And this is not like lead in the water kind of thing. It's a book. Your children can read it or not. Your kids can read it along with you and you can talk to them about what you're reading and why it's scary and why it's funny and why it's not, not coming to get you in the night. Like,
right.
So this could have been an excellent, like, pickup point for parents to talk to their kids about stuff. And in fact, that's kind of how I used it with my daughter. I needed her to start practicing reading out loud. And so I would give her these books, the Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark books, so that she could practice because they're short, but they're interesting and they hold your...
And it's a whole idea. It's a whole story.
And there's kind of a rhythm to it. And depending on, which story that you're reading, and it felt like this was a good place for that. And she read out of these so much that at one point she was like, Mom, can you read? And I'm like,
I love that story.
She's like, yes, baby, I'm a professional writer. It's like, I promise I can read.
She was concerned about it,
Yeah, because I was asking her to read out loud to me, and it was all these stories, and like, it threw her.
Yeah.
But she loved the stories. She loved the books. But yeah, it's using them to create talking points, to discuss larger issues with your kids, to give them a chance to read out loud or read out short bits. Like, this was a lovely book for kids.
And I think children should be allowed and, in fact, encouraged to read horror because fear is a good thing. Fear is a survival skill, and sure, monsters and all that aren't real, but parents need to make their children aware that there are situations out there and people out there that might hurt them.
Yeah, and it gives you a place to funnel that fear so that if you're not being afraid of everything, it gives you a outlet for that fear and anxiety that you have naturally, that all people have, some of us more than others. But
yeah,
I mean, that's us.
But that's us. That's why we're doing this.
So there was very much that approach at the time, and there was so much of this was from religious crusaders.
Right.
And I hate that so much because I am totally fine with you having whatever beliefs you have.
Absolutely, 100%.
Don't make me live according to your religious beliefs, and I will do the same for you.
Right.
Like, so it's one of those things, like, watching all these people be like, well, the Bible says, and Jesus wouldn't, and I'm like, the only thing we know that Jesus would do from the Bible is he would provide everybody wine. Yeah. He would use a whip to whip the rich people after he knocked over their tables in temple.
There you go.
That's the thing. So anything other than those two things, you don't get to tell me, well, Jesus wouldn't want us to. No.
Well, there is carpentry. Jesus,
Jesus would make you a table.
He would make you a table, and it would be constructed so well that we'd still have it. Not this crappy IKEA furniture which is giving Jesus anxiety right now. I'm sure.
But Jesus never would have gone into a library and been like, don't read that.
No. Oh, good Lord, no.
But yeah, so the people were pushing so hard against these books. And when Alvin Schwartz's son was in graduate school, he told his dad he didn't think these stories had any value, and it strained their relationship. And like they had this difficult falling out, and they kind of came back together. But so as we're listening to his son, and we're listening to this crusader woman who didn't want anybody to ever read these books,
right?
We see her in a car, and we're following this conversation, and then we see him putting together a charcuterie board because she is coming to talk to Alvin Schwartz's son, and they're going to have this conversation about the values of these books. And I just about lost my mind. I wrote in one of my comments was, oh Lord, this woman is blaming all the violence in society on these books. What the actual fuck?
Oh, absolutely. Oh, you know that's gonna happen.
Yeah, this woman, Sandy, her name was Sandy. That's right.
Okay, Sandy.
I knew that was somewhere in my brain. I knew I had it. But she just had this approach that if we didn't read scary stories to children, there would be no violence. I don't know if she's ever met a child, but they love to rip dolls apart and destroy property and smack each other. And like, humans are innately violent. And it is through our relationships with each other as we've built societies and things where we've pulled back from that.
Right. Exactly.
And that's not how we function. It is on a larger scale, but just, individuals, that's not how we function. And she's just like, oh, if you didn't read these books, I guarantee you your toddler ripped a toy out of somebody else's hand and hit them with it.
Yeah, exactly.
The violence is not caused by these books. And so she's talking about this with Stephen Schwartz. And he said to her, well, how do you balance this issue with decision-making and control?
Right.
Because book bans at their core are taking away your ability to make your own decisions about what you read.
It takes your autonomy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's kind of the point of a lot of them is, I don't want you to have the option to read this. I don't want you to have this information. So like right now, as we're watching, basically the state of Florida is getting rid of the concept of libraries, whatnot. It is a big question about how much control do other people get to have over your life? What do you get to read? What do you get to not? What do you get to watch on TV?
This sounds remarkably like a communist country.
Or at least like the American scaremongery communist country idea. It is weird. And when they say, well, if you want to read it, you can buy it. You don't have to the library doesn't have to have it. Well, then you were deciding anybody below a certain income level, you get to control what all of that is.
I never would have thought of that.
Yeah. And anybody who wants to read a lot, like if you don't want to spend $4,000 a year on books.
No, but I would. I would.
Oh, if I had the money.
I know.
But I mean, the library gives you at the end of the receipt, every time you check it out, they're like, this year you've saved X number of dollars by not buying these books.
Oh, I saw that.
Or at least the library here does. And so you get your receipt for, you're there in October, and it's like, you saved $450 on books this year.
Cool.
And that means the library bought those books. They're supporting that author. They buy a lot of copies of some books for like book clubs and so lots of people can have them. And it's the kind of thing where if you don't want to read that, don't read that. Nobody's holding you down and forcing it into you like Dr. Strangelove style. Like, that's not.
Yes.
And public libraries are so valuable and important to society and people and maintaining an educated populace. And back in the Rockefeller days, when the rich people were like, poor people are going to rise up and fucking eat us, we better do something valuable, they built libraries and they built like playhouses and they built theaters
to maintain the culture.
Yeah, they understood that they had to give back,
Right.
or else they were going to get a pitchfork in the butt. That's what was coming for them. Modern billionaires don't seem to understand that quite so much.
No.
They're more, how many celebrities can I launch into space?
Yes. Thank you.
Or down into the ocean in a submarine.
And down, can we bring Pearl Jam down to see the Titanic? One of the weirdest concepts I think we've talked about on this show. Oh boy.
But yeah, so they talk about the value of public libraries and how it enables people to have control and autonomy of what they are reading and what they're learning and what they're putting into their brain and their bodies and all of that. It was really lovely. And this bitch Sandy did not appreciate any of that. And at this point, her children are adults, the same as I am. And I assure you, I haven't had so much as a parking ticket in 25 years. I am well employed and liked in my work and my community, and I have a lovely family. Reading these spooky books did me no harm.
Right. No, certainly not.
And I don't know her kids, but I don't know that they can say that. Like, her kids may be super messed up, or they could be mentally.
My parents took me to see The Exorcist when I was 9.
Did they know what they were walking into? Or?
I don't know. It was a drive-in theater. So it didn't, I don't think I understood it on any intellectual level, and there really isn't any gore. It's all psychological.
One vomit scene, but
yeah, it's both body horror.
Yeah,
there it is, and not being satisfied, in destroying my mental health with that. Then they took me to see Jaws. And then I was like, Mom, we got to talk about this. It's starting to get a little weird.
Oh, my God. So Jaws, my daughter's English teacher this year, first day of school, announces to everyone that Jaws is, she thinks, the best movie ever made. And she goes into this reasoning why.
Okay.
And one of their assignments was to see Jaws before the 3rd of September, because they were going to have an assignment
about Jaws.
And so I looked at her and I said, well, it's the 50th anniversary of Jaws. Let's go see it in the theater.
Oh, yeah.
And we saw it in 3D in the theater. We had the 3D glass.
Oh, my God.
It was wonderful. And we got to the end of it, and my daughter was like, that was good, but is that really horror? And I said, baby, people were so afraid of this. They were killing sharks by the thousands and refusing to go to the beach.
Yeah.
And she was like, no way. And we had to call my dad so she could be like, Grandpa, is Mom pulling my leg? Like, was this really a big deal? And he was like, you have no idea.
Yeah, big a deal this was. Oh, yes.
And the 3D really, the thing that was the most 3D in it was the water. So it really felt like you were sitting in the water.
Oh, cool.
And it wasn't so much that a shark jumped out at you, but if you felt immersed kind of in the scene.
Yeah.
So that was lovely. But yeah, so even today, middle school teachers are now assigning horror as parts of the thing.
Their curriculum. I think that's fantastic.
And also, horror is kind of subjective.
Sure.
Because I will go to my grave saying that The Grapes of Wrath is a horror book. It is 100% John Steinbeck's attempt at horror.
Depression. Is that where the horror is? Or
so The Grapes of Wrath, for people who haven't read it, it's this family in Oklahoma. It's the Dust Bowl.
Right.
Their land has been destroyed. They can farm nothing. And through the town, dropping from airplanes, I don't remember exactly how they did it, but hundreds and hundreds of flyers. There's jobs in California. Pack up. Everybody go to California. You will have work. And so they pack up all of their things. They sell their land for a pittance because it's not worth anything and can't grow anything.
Right.
They go out to California, and the jobs are, surprise fuckers, we've got 800 jobs for 10,000 people. You now get to be here and in poverty in California. And they're watching as they're spraying kerosene over piles of oranges and lighting them on fire so that nobody can eat them because they're not paying for them.
Oh, my
God. And they're going in through this, the way that we treat people in poverty. And one of the women in this book is heavily pregnant. Her name is Rose of Sharon.
Uh-huh.
And they're going through, and she ends up giving birth, and the baby dies.
Oh.
and her father is dying. I think it's her father, maybe a different old man, but either way, there is an old man who is dying,
right?
and she is now lactating. And so she breastfeeds this old man because he has no access to any other food. And that's the end. Surprise.
Surprise, Joad family. You're even worse off than, oh my God.
But this idea of this good thing will happen to you. No, now your entire life is going to go into destruction. And the final thing, not look how much better things are getting, but watch me breastfeed an old man because if I don't, he will die. To me, that is horror on a social level, on a like psychological level. That is as horror as Silence of the Lambs.
Oh yeah, that one did it for me. Yeah.
And most people, I don't think, would read that and walk away and be like, that qualifies as horror.
Oh, Grapes of Wrath?
Yeah.
For me, it qualified as depressing as all fuck. That's
that's
not a genre.
It was depressing, and it was, and it is by far one of my favorite books, the great American novel, if ever there was one.
Hey, good choice.
But it, to me, reads like horror because there is this never-ending starvation and damage to these people, and they are just being lied to and ripped apart by the society around them. It is vile.
And see, a high school student wouldn't consider that horror. They don't know that that sort of thing exists in real life. They know that they're going to have a hot meal tonight. They know that, they don't realize adult scary things.
Yeah.
They're worried about bullying and the prom, and my best friend and I had a fight and I got a D in my math quiz, or mom's going to kill me. But mom is worried about becoming homeless, losing your job. What are you going to do in the streets?
Every time I see a news story, like it was especially big in 2020, but it happens every year. There's a news story about store loses power and they have to throw out everything refrigerated, and they station police officers with guns so that you cannot take food out of the dumpster. Or when nobody was buying anything, and so they were flushing thousands of gallons of milk in 2020 down the sewers rather than giving it to people who couldn't afford it. There was a farm that dumped probably like 10,000 pounds of potatoes into the river and stationed guards so that people could not go into the river and get the potatoes. They will force you to starve to death because they would rather you starve to death than them lose money on something once. And to me, that is the horror that we live every day. That is the horror that is imposed on us by capitalism and our current system. And so the Grapes of Wrath sticks with me as like horror in a real way. And I'm sure Sandy, the book banning lady, probably was fine with reading Grapes of Wrath.
That could be,
Like, I don't know that she would have looked at that and been like, my kids shouldn't read that.
Right.
At least at that point. Today, modern people seem to be complaining about that sort of thing. But yeah, so these books have such value, and what is scary to one person is not necessarily scary to the other, or people can see horror in places where other people might not.
Right.
And so as they're going through all of this and the value of libraries and books and, providing this kind of thing to everybody, they then slide into an art show. That's the Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark art show. And there are sculptures and paintings and a tattoo artist who's her body is these images.
Oh my God.
And when we were watching this, my daughter looked at me and was like, I am so sad that it's over and we can't go see that. She would have loved to have gone to that.
I'm sure.
And then they're talking about how originally the trilogy of books was released in the early 80s with this art. And then a few years back, they re-released it with different, less scary art.
Right.
And people lost their minds. They were like, how dare you take that art away?
Exactly.
That was part and parcel of the story. It was part of what made it good. Put it back.
And I love that they showed on eBay how much The original books are set with the original art.
Yeah.
Selling for over $1,000. $1,000. Damn.
And then it was re-released in 2017 with the original art again because there was such uproar. So this thing that people hated so much they wanted it banned was so beloved that changing it even a little bit sent people into an uproar.
Yes.
And I think that what you value is not necessarily what somebody else values. And forcing that on people is not
helping anybody.
It's not helping anybody. You're not, as much as it is, I think, intended to be a good thing. It's good intentions of trying to do right by the community. I don't think it always is. I feel like it's more a method of control that feels like you're trying to do something good.
Right.
And while people seem to think that they have good intentions, you know, the road to hell is paved with good intentions. That's it goes.
Exactly.
And I love these books. And if you've not read them and your kids haven't read them, go to the library, go to the thrift store, go, somewhere, find these books because they're out there. And it is such a good time. You will love it so much. And honestly, read the story about the cats waiting for Martin. Read that out loud to the kids. Watch their eyes get bigger and bigger until they're like, no, I'm going to check out. Martin can do something else.
Martin can call me later.
But thanks for listening to Real Stories, Real Problems with your hosts, Rachael and Roxanne. We hope you enjoyed our deep dive into scary stories and the value of public libraries. Join us again next week for a glimpse into another financial problem and a documentary all about it. If you enjoyed our show today, please remember to like, subscribe, and leave us a review on your podcast app. Thanks for listening. See you again next week.
Bye for now.